We are back to the Dr. Baruch Health Literacy Show with Helise, who is obviously not here with us today. Helise is vacationing, and she'll be back next week. But we're talking to now a new doctor and somebody who's going to share with us information from a completely different perspective. And we have Dr. Chappelle. And Dr. Chappelle, as soon as I get it here, I'm going to be able to let everybody see what Dr. Chappelle looks like. Hey, how are you? Everything good?
Everything's wonderful.
Great. Dr. Chappelle, tell us a little bit about yourself. And I purposefully didn't say your first name because I should have asked you the proper pronunciation of your first name. I would have said Nessie?
Nesa.
Nesa. Okay. Please tell us a little bit about yourself. Who is Dr. Chappelle?
Hello, everyone. I am an advocate of women and children. I am a graduate of Howard University's Black Politics program, PhD. And I have to say that one thing I appreciate so much about Howard is that it taught me about blackness.
Yes.
And what it really means and what it really is. And as a result of that, I began to study politics, and I wrote a dissertation on the mass incarceration of black women. And as I was doing the research, I realized that there's no real data on African American women, and that I will use Black American and Black off and on, but it means the same. And what happened is there's no data on the black woman in prison. And it was a time when mandatory minimums was at its peak. All you had to do is for a woman is to put a bag of coke or crack cocaine in your purse because your man asked you to do it, and mandatory minimum said you go to jail for a minimum of 5 years. Wow. There was no judicial discretion. And so I became interested in that and did work on that. And then as I was doing work on that, I ran into this thing called domestic minor sex trafficking, which is the commercial exploitation using sex of children under 18. And so that's what I'm here to discuss today.
Great. And we've got Sister Romalda, who is a former, can I tell everybody what you used to do? Former D.C. police officer.
That's retired.
Yes, and who probably has been involved in the process, you know, as an employee, you know, but yet and still involved in that process, and saw how people were being treated, and she got involved with the juvenile side in the sense that if we could begin to empower our youth and make our youth have values and maybe change some of the things that they thought were things that they needed to be involved in, that we could possibly change their lives and give them a good quality of life. Yes. So you all were working in the same space from different angles and different perspectives. And Romalda, tell us a little bit about who you are.
Well, I'm known as the Red Skin Cupcake Lady, and my company is called Gourmet Cakes in a Cup. But I am retired from D.C. Metropolitan Police Department, and I've enjoyed my career there, considering that I've met some wonderful people and dealt with the like you said, with the juveniles. I was at Roosevelt and Coolidge High School as an officer, and I tried to change a lot of the the young kids' lives, considering they were young adults, to go in different directions, considering that they thought this what was the norm for them. And I tried to explain to them that it doesn't have to be the norm. You can make a different path. You can take a different path and change your life forever. So.
And Dr. Chappelle, your work is not necessarily with youth that are committing crimes. Your work is with youth that are a part of a criminal system where they get abducted many times and to become sex slaves, or they become illegal workers, and that they're too young to work. And probably a lot of that work has to do with sex. But, how pervasive is it in the United States of America now? You know, when you think of sex slaves or you think of that industry, you think of other countries. You may think of Africa or Indonesia or some of the, or Philippines is probably where you think of. You don't think of America. How prevalent is it?
Dr. Baruch, that's a great question. Most people, when I speak to them, they say, "Oh, well, I thought that was going on overseas."
Yeah.
No, it's right here in America. It's very pervasive here. My last research indicated that we have approximately 293,000 children who are being sex trafficked. Right
293,000
in this country. The other thing is, it's so pervasive until it is a $3.2 billion, and that's older data, $3.2 billion enterprise. It's a business. It has a hierarchy, it has rules. And what I want to go back to something you said, because one of the reasons that I enjoy being here is I wanted to bring some things to light. Now, most of the kids are not abducted.
Right. Some of them run away.
A lot of them are runaways. A lot of them are in foster care.
Right.
A lot of them are abused at home.
Right.
A lot of them don't feel loved. A lot of them don't feel like they have a home. They don't feel like they have parents that care about them. The mothers may have boyfriends who rape the children all the time.
Right.
So it's not necessarily that they're being abducted.
And you said boyfriend. It may be, unfortunately, it may be their own parents.
Their own parents,
Yes.
uncles, brothers,
In
cousins,
their family.
anybody. The
family
trafficker
member.
or the pimp.
If it's waiting at the bus stop
That's
or
right.
waiting for the young girls to come from another state to get off the bus, and they're right there waiting like vultures.
Yeah. They have pimps and trackers. Trackers don't have any specific face. It could be anybody. It could be female. It could be male.
Yes.
It could be old. It could be young. It could be black. It could be white.
Yes.
It could be Asian. It could be anything. And what happens is a lot of times these children are lured, if you will.
Right.
A lot of it happens online.
And that's the main one these days.
Yes, the main one. And what I'd like people to know is that Backpage.com
Yes, I heard of that.
is the primary.
Wow.
It's a primary website. And it's like you can go on Backpage.com and you can order a child to your specification. Whether you want them to be white, black, Hispanic,
Ethnicity, it doesn't matter.
Big breast or big buttocks, whatever you want.
From the age of what?
13.
Even younger than that, right?
But now I was going to say it was 13 according to Araminta, which is a national nonprofit religious organization. But I argue, well, that's different. I argue that as young as 10.
Right. Okay.
As young as 10. When you talk about the babies, that's
right.
A little something else.
Yes. It's sad, but it's real.
It's real, yeah. But at least 10. And the younger the better, because you have to understand that this is a business.
Yes.
It's interesting.
A multi-billion-dollar. I mean, it's major.
Yes.
Major.
And it's so pervasive that not only is it a multi-billion-dollar company, it's the traffickers and the pimps realize that a child has not developed a brain in terms of being rational and able to make decisions until they're 24, 25. So that means that if the trafficker can get a child at 10, then it's easy for him to make her believe that she was born to be a prostitute.
Yes.
And that's what happens. And then it ends up being a trauma bond.
Right.
And the trauma bond is almost akin to the Stockholm syndrome, but for children. This is such a dark area. It's such a dark area. Dr. Baruch, I had to take off 4 years to do this work because it was really getting to me.
Yeah, it can.
And I had to take off, and during that time I went to seminary school because I realized that I needed to have God, or the Creator, to work with me, work with these children. I couldn't do it by myself. So I'm back.
Great.
So what's important to know is what the life of these children is about. There's what you call a honeymoon period, where the pimp or the trafficker finds a child. Let's take an example. The child could be at a mall, looking in the store window at a at a pocketbook or a pair of shoes.
Mm.
And the pimp come up in her and say, "Oh, you like those shoes? Oh, they would look so good on you because you are a beautiful young girl." And he said, "Can I get those for you?" Now, remember I said, these children are still children, babies, the brains of babies. So, oh yeah, what? And so he goes and he buys the shoes, and then somehow they hook up, and then he starts to date her.
Yes.
Okay. And then he makes sure that she falls in love with him. Then he'll say, well, you know, Daddy's been busy, you know, and you cost Daddy a lot of money. I bought you a lot of things and this and that, and I'm Daddy, so you know.
They're treating them.
They're treating them. So I'm going to need you to do me a favor, and I need you to go out do something for me so that Daddy will have the money to continue to take care of you.
Wow. So it's a chess match. They figure out how to make moves and set people up so that now you're obligated because I've done all this for you.
Yeah, so it's called the honeymoon period. Yeah, it's honeymoon period. It's the honeymoon period. Now, then this is the part where she goes to work.
Okay.
And this is the life of a child.
And the pimp doesn't fall in love with her.
No.
Oh, no.
He sees her as just a pawn in the game.
Yes.
No.
She's another employee.
A friend of mine, Dr. Wheeler, told me that the profile of a pimp is, and a trafficker is low value, low level of respect for women. They're usually gay.
They hate women.
They hate women. They're usually gay. That they if accosted by the police officer, they become punks.
Right.
You know, they become little punks. You know, but any other time they're this big gorilla. There's a thing called the gorilla pimp. A gorilla pimp is a vicious pimp. Okay,
will kill, will
whatever.
do all of the above to keep that female under
control and power and control. And what I want to say about that is that this is the life of the children. We can tell immediately when a child is being sex trafficked because within 30 days they've lost anywhere from 20 to 30 pounds. And that's because the pimps will starve them to control them. But think about it. This is a child. When you're hungry, you do almost anything. They're raped, sometimes 8 and 9 grown men, because they have to learn how to submit. And they are tattooed. That becomes the ownership, the branding of the pimp, the same as the branding of slaves back in the 1700s, the same thing. I can show you, I did a graph that modern slavery and what I call antebellum slavery are the same. They're the same. These children have to sometimes, depending on what the quota is that the pimp is looking for, whether it's $500 or $1,500, they have to make that. If they don't make that a night, then they're beaten and thrown back out on the street to make it. So you're talking about children sometimes will have sex with up to 3 men a night to make a quota. You were speaking with Dr. Drake, and you asked about cycles.
Yes.
In the child pimp world, it doesn't matter. Because whether they're on their cycle or not, they have to go to work. And so what happens is that the pimp will stuff them with cotton or gauze so that they will not bleed on the john.
Oh my goodness.
Right?
Wow, that's
And they cannot remove it. The pimp puts it in and the pimp takes it out. Right? And so there's no time off for them. It's every night. 24/7. The average amount of time that they can sleep maybe 3 or 4 hours.
Wow.
And so that's the life of a child. She's not allowed to spend time with family. She's not allowed to spend time with friends.
You don't want them to pull them away.
No, she's not allowed to intermingle, because if you ever, now that I'm talking to you, you'll be able to be more sensitive to it.
Yes.
Whenever you see a child with her tracker or pimp, you will see the timidity. Yeah, she doesn't make eye contact. She doesn't talk to people. She doesn't ask questions unless to the pimp. If she were to make eye contact with another pimp, then she's beaten. And then she could be sold to the pimp she made the eye contact with. Okay? So it's like back in the day, Dr. Baruch, auction.
Yes.
Because that's what it is, an auction. And sometimes for girls that are very difficult, the traffickers will sell that person, sell that child to somebody else. Any questions before I continue on? Any questions?
You know, I can relate to what you're saying. Like I said, considering that I'm from the police department, and also myself, when I was 16, a guy tried to kidnap me 3 times out of my school. I was going to Coolidge High School at the time. This was back in 1982, and this guy, they arrested him on the 3rd time. I mean, he was so bold that whereas though he came into the school, knew where my class was.
Well,
and it was crazy.
This is called sneaker pimp. That's a sneaker pimp. That's the name for them, sneaker pimps.
Well, he didn't know who my mom was.
Because
it was not happening.
because they come into the schools with their little sneakers just like all the children.
Oh, he bought a puppy. This is the crazy thing about it. He bought a puppy and thought he was going to get a lot of the girls to, like.
Well, that's how they do. They get puppies. Because the girls will fall in love with the puppies, and then there it is, their children.
This guy was lunching off of, they said, off of angel dust. He thought I looked like one of his girlfriends, previous girlfriend, and he was 28 years old, and I was only 16 at the time.
But the younger the better, because a woman at 28 is too old. They don't want them old. They want them young.
Right.
That's crazy.
And the other thing that I could tell you about this is that there is an anti-trafficking, MST anti-trafficking law of 2000. And since that time, it's had a couple of amendments. But that's a federal case. The only time the feds are going to get involved is if it's a big crime that with millions of dollars involved, because they don't have time for the small stuff. So when you hear about a federal crime, you can look at the dollar amount that case has netted, and you can see why it's a federal. Other than that, and the law says that kids under 18 are not prostitutes, are not hoes. They are victims. Yes. That's the big difference now. These are victims. Now, our children are at so much peril because if they were to call the police, they have to worry about getting raped by the police so that they won't be arrested.
Oh, wow.
Yes, that's a big deal. And we have clergy, we have doctors, we have lawyers. Everybody rapes these children because they figure, well, you hoes in him.
Oh, wow.
And so
there's no help. I mean, it seems like
no.
there's no help. I mean, once you think that this adult is going to help you, it's something else.
What it is, there's no trust. By the time they've gone through what they've gone through, they don't trust anybody. I know the girls I have mentored did trust me for a long time. And their question to me is, why do you care? Right. Why do you want to help?
Because it's not just the men that do it,
it's the women that do it. And I had to tell them my background. I was molested by my stepfather. So I could have easily been one of these children who was a victim because I didn't have love at home. All I had at home was terror. And so when I tell them my story, then they say, oh, and then it changes. They know that you relate
to them, and you've gone through the same thing, so you know what they're feeling.
I know what they're feeling. And the other thing is, when we talk about help for the children, instead of putting them in jail, they need therapy. Remind me to come back to that. But now therapy is one thing, but you have to have people who are specially trained in trauma therapy. Because these children are traumatized. Okay, so they need to be trained in trauma therapy, and so many of the social workers are not. So these kids are put with people who don't even have a clue as to how to help them. And the other thing is, it's hard to rescue these girls because they have formed an affinity for the trafficker. That's who feeds them. That's who gives them a place to sleep, who clothes them. And so it's hard for them to leave the trafficker. But that's like leaving a parent to them. I've had one. I had one of the girls who said to me, her trafficker beat her all the time, And she said, but it was my fault. I know he loves me. I said, well, how do you know he loves you? And she said, because he always buys me a candy bar. So that's love to them. So it's a dark place. It's a dark place.
And it's not just sex, because there are those that are being trafficked and they're working.
Okay, that's labor trafficking.
Okay, labor trafficking. Do you do any work in that space?
No, I don't do a lot of work, but you still have some of the same things going on in labor trafficking, because they will bring women into work, but then she becomes the concubine. She can't go anywhere. They take her passport. They take it and her ID. So it's the same thing, except that maybe she's grown, she's a little bit older, but she becomes the concubine. At the same time, she can't talk to people. She can't have friends. She can't, if people come over to see the family, she's got to disappear. So she's a slave in the household. She's not being paid.
No. You know what? It's crazy because I just recently went down to Texas back in April. And I stayed down there a month because when I got down there, I was looking for a place, and I had a real estate agent. And he asked me, he said, I hope you got a gun. I said, what is that supposed to mean? He said, well, you stick out like a sore thumb down here. And he said, I don't know if you're familiar with it or not, but it's a lot of sex trafficking that's going on down here.
It's everywhere.
And I'm to myself, I'm 50 years old. There's no way nobody's going to try to do that with me. He said, no, I'm telling you right now.
It's everywhere.
Yes.
It's not just Texas. It's everywhere. It's Utah. Yes. It's Minnesota. It's places you would not even think that was happening. It's everywhere. It's right here in our backyard.
Right here.
And the reason that this area is very prevalent is because of the highways. The 495
So
and
the trucks that come in and
well, yeah, and it's easy to get the children out. It's easy to get the children out. If there's a football game going on in say New York, well, you get 95. You know, so it's easy access.
Wow. Wow. And this is it's right. It could be right in your face, and you don't know because they're afraid, they're timid, and they don't want to lose that which is all that they have. Because again, just in any relationship, you know, the person who's more dominant causes the other to feel like, well, you need me.
Well, they beat them half to death. Number one, it's not so much.
They submit.
Yeah, they submit. I mean, yeah, they feel like they need them, but they beat them and they burn them. They do all kinds of horrific acts to these children.
They burn them. They beat them. I mean,
it's everything. And so
it's
they're petrified. They're terrified. So they don't want to be beat. They don't want to be put into a cage like a pit bull.
And they don't think probably that you can really rescue them. So even when you can show them a path out of it, they don't want to take that risk, because if they take that risk and it fails, then they got to go back to the beating.
Well, it's all about. It's more than that, Dr. Baruch. If it doesn't work, they can be killed.
Right.
If you leave your trafficker, your pimp,
you leave yourself vulnerable.
Then you can consider yourself dead.
Right.
Because this is money that the trafficker or the pimp is losing. It's a commodity. It's not a person. It's a commodity. And so, and it's all about the money. And something else that you probably know this too, depends on your ethnicity and your race, it is what the cost for your service will be. For example, if you wanted Snow White, you want to pay more money. If you wanted African American, you're not going to pay as much. If you want Hispanic, you're not going to pay as much. Now, the way that pimps get over on that is, I tell you what, I'll pair you up with a Snow White and a black girl. But see, the Snow White is going to pull the money. Still.
So there's racism in that industry as well.
Yes.
It is. Absolutely.
And so the African American doesn't get paid as much. Now, what is this that I'm hearing now that young boys are being trafficked as well?
It's not just happening. It's always been happening, but it's been quiet.
Right. And it's just coming to light now.
They're trafficked by usually are transgenders. Okay, and so the transgenders are called mamas. Okay, so they are trafficked by the transgender mamas. Now, what happens is that the transgender mamas also work, but they traffic the boys because everybody has to pay. Everybody's got to pay for living expenses and food and rent, and the mama has to continue to get paid because
the mama has aged out.
she's taking care of everybody, and so that's what that is. That's a whole different.
Wow.
That's a whole different thing. I had one male client that had been turned out by his babysitter.
You'd be surprised how often that happens for young males.
He was supposed to meet one John in a hotel room, 6th floor. And when he got there, there were like 6 men waiting on him. And he jumped out of the window on the 6th floor. Luckily, he didn't die. He recuperated. He broke a lot of stuff, but he recuperated. But when he saw the 10 men waiting for him, he couldn't handle it. He jumped out of the window. So it does happen. It does happen to boys. Boys are recruited at about 8, 9. Girls are recruited at now 10. Yeah, because you have buyers. Now let's talk about the buyers. Okay. You have buyers who prefer boys. Okay, you have those.
Keep that on a low key.
Yeah, they keep right.
These are married men. You know, people that are married to either males or females. You know, both, and they want boys, but they try to keep it on the low.
And the average buyer is white, age 55, live in the suburbs, 2.5 children.
Is he married?
Yes.
And 9 times out of 10, make a lot of money. You know, I mean, it's sometimes.
Is there protection? You know, is there how are they able to do this and they get away with it?
Okay.
Judges,
well,
attorneys, things that have more high empowered.
But it's even more than that. It's even more than that. It's even more than that because each state has its own law.
Yeah.
Okay, we're talking about the United States of America. Each state, Maryland has its state, Virginia has its state. Well, so and we find that in the states, they only smack the man on the hand and say, "Go on home, your wife, don't let me see you out here again." And the child is taken to jail.
So it seems like it's 5 years. 5 years.
So the child.
No, not in the states.
Yes.
No.
What state it is? Like they only get 5 years.
They don't get that.
Oh my God.
They may get at the most. The most horrific one, they get 18 months. So that's why they keep doing it. Number one, it's the third domestic minded sex trafficking is the third largest criminal enterprise. Third after drugs and guns.
And I was also told that within the illegal and illicit activity that we see taking place on the streets, it's now beginning to encroach upon the drug industry because this industry is easier to navigate because you're not holding the product.
Oh, that's what I just said. Yeah, it's third because you're finding that more and more gangs now are involved in this because of that same reason. Well, I don't have to mess with the drugs, so I won't get the time. Right. They know that, so they use. Now this is interesting that I have to bring forward. Hispanic girls are usually trafficked by their own. Okay, Asian girls are usually trafficked by their own. Blacks traffic whatever they can get, but usually it's whatever race, ethnicity you are that will be trafficked.
And even family members sometimes, right?
Well, family members is interesting because family members usually have a history of generation of that work. So it's generational.
Right. It's the norm.
It's the norm. You know, you're bred to do that.
So this child enters into this industry at 12 and 13 years of age, and at what point do they kind of get thrown back out because they're too old?
Well, they don't get thrown back out as long as they can make the money.
So and at that point they transition and they become what we see and what is probably more obvious, the prostitute that might be in the corner.
Not necessarily, because these children only have a lifespan of 7 years.
You're talking about this is every day.
You're talking about
All
every day, all day long. They only have a lifespan of about 7 years.
So they're dead by 20.
Exactly.
And
Or
once they're
murder.
on drugs, right? I mean, they'll try to get on drugs and things of that nature. I mean, it's just it's crazy.
And when they run away, you know, so they come to you, and you say that they're afraid for some time because they don't trust you. So, at what point do they finally break that cycle of fear and they're free and they can become, you know, I have a customer who came in and she said that she was sex trafficked and she broke away, you know, and now she's speaking on it, and she does work in that space. I'll make sure I give you her information. But just, you know, at what point do you break free and you establish some normal life? Those that ever do, you know, so if they can get away before 7 years, do they break away?
Sometimes they can. Sometimes they get the right support and the right encouragement, and they can, but they're taking a risk. They realize they're taking a risk. But yeah, sometimes you do. I have a client who is now in law school, you know, and this is what she wants to do for her work. This is what she wants to do. So yeah, you would, but too often they will not break away.
Wow. Now, how about identifying the pimp and the trafficker? Is it, with all the technology that we've got, you know, with being able to track cell phone, you know, communication or cell phone location even, you know, is not the modern, you know, police and the federal, you know, FBI agency, aren't they able to easily track the behavior? You know, once they got an idea that so-and-so might be doing this, they're able to lock in on somebody, Romalda?
Well, let me just be honest.
Okay.
This isn't a hot topic for any of them.
Right. I would say
This is
minute.
it's not relevant to them. So yeah, but let me just say this: the technology, you're right, is here. However, these traffickers and pimps are smart. They're not going to be the ones on the phone making the dates, or setting it up. They're going to have what you call a bottom. You know about the bottom, and the bottom is usually a female that's been with them a long time.
That they can trust.
That
right?
The bottom.
Look,
They call them a bottom for a reason, because they don't give them any hierarchy. So they're the bottom. So they're not going to be the one who is easily targeted. And the girls will never tell on who will tell them. They will never tell who their pimp is. Never.
That's their oath to them.
No, won't do it.
Okay. Now,
Like I said, that's their daddy. So that's the person that's looking out for them. So no, they're not gonna tell them they consider them as their boyfriend or their husband, things of that nature. Or they, you know, that's the person that's out for them. So they're not gonna tell them that person.
You got what you know. I told you, the pimp has total control and power over these children. Total.
And they know the ones to go after, the ones that they can control, and the ones that they can't. They know they won't go after those females. It's too hard. It's too risky, and no.
That chat room, the chat rooms. Talk about the chat rooms. They go on the computer in these chat rooms, and they may find the child. You know, my mother get on my nerves. You know, she don't let me buy nothing. Can't never go nowhere. I don't have enough to eat. Well, those are the ones that they're going to come after, and then they'll get on there and make friends with them, and so that becomes their target.
Or the low self-esteem ones.
Low self-esteem, and it's so important, I think, that we teach our girls early, and that we teach them early. A lot of times we try to get into the schools, but then the parents don't want the kids to know about that. I just think that's horrendous, because they have to know about it, because it's in the schools.
They need to know. It is so prevalent in the schools. It's unbelievable.
what about the single parent, you know, ratio, the number that come from single parent homes as opposed to, you know, the dual parent homes?
Okay, the single parent homes, there's a lot.
Yeah.
That's, you can say that is the majority.
Mm-hmm.
And also with single family homes, the mothers may not have the time.
Right.
They may
She
work in
works
2
all the
jobs.
time.
So that leaves the child home all the time,
Exposed,
lonely and da-da-da-da.
On
So
that computer.
on that computer. Now, if they have a computer,
Right,
if they
right,
have a
right.
computer. But then they'll have a girlfriend and say, I know how you
Right,
can make some money,
Exactly.
and introduce them. That's another way that it happens. Yeah. And,
Your friend that you thought was your friend.
right.
That's not your friend.
That's not your friend. And so this is what's interesting. Recently, we're finding that the traffickers and the pimps have now encroached on suburban America, Northern Virginia. Well, guess what? All of a sudden, you have all these new commissions and all of these new task forces because the suburban girls who's got everything is being lured by usually their gangs,
Right.
you know.
Right.
And this is a time when these girls go through, I like the bad boys, that bad boy syndrome.
Right.
And
Give me
so
a roughneck, right?
Yeah.
roughneck. And so then they're easily lured.
Yes.
And these are girls
they are.
from Northern Virginia
That have everything.
that have everything. So now
They have
it's being
everything
given
but love.
attention
Yeah.
because it's moved into the areas that's prohibited.
Right.
Wow.
See, nobody
What you
thinks
say,
about
Oh no, it doesn't happen.
the
here.
poor kids,
Yes.
or the foster kids, or the throwaways, or
Right.
the runaways.
Right.
But when it starts hitting
Yeah. Then you start
Suburban America.
you start setting aside police officers to specifically be
yeah,
a task
for that.
force over that.
in PG, I used to work with the. I was a member of the Maryland Commission on Sex Trafficking, and all of the majority of the officers in PG County were trained. But I can tell you that there was so much apathy in that training room until it made me just angry. They had the look on their faces. Oh well. Oh please. And that was the
Doesn't bother me
apathetic.
until it hits home.
Yeah. And so, and that's why I left the commission. I wasn't happy with. I wanted to see some real action.
People that really care.
They really care. I wasn't interested in the power and the prestige and the position. I wanted to see, and I even went to them and said, you need more black women in here talking about this thing, because white women are telling our children that the majority of children that are trafficked are black. That's not true. That's not true. We don't even have the majority of black in this country. And so there's a lot that needs to be done. Kids need to see people who look like them,
Exactly.
and we need to be listened to.
Right. And the children, when your child tells you that something has happened, you need to listen to it. And I know many times we don't. As adults, as parents, we sometimes, you're just overacting. They didn't mean to do it. That's just Uncle So-and-so. He's just friendly.
Right. Oh, he's just exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And
they don't understand that. They're not listening. And listening is the key.
And they're probably looking for somebody who they can relate to.
Who
they
will
can
help
tell
them.
Right.
Who will
And when
help
you brush it off, then it's like, oh, well, I'm not telling you anymore. So then you just go through it until you can find somebody else.
And they don't even tell you when they're raped,
Right.
because they feel like
What's
it's my fault.
Right.
Yeah. What we wearing? Why are you
Right.
wearing that? I told you not to wear that. You're getting all that attention. You think you're cute. Now you're sassy. Now you got that, and I look at you. And of course, the victim gets, blamed.
And in our communities, let's talk about our communities. You don't air your dirty laundry,
Right.
because if cousin so and so did it or uncle so and so did it, be quiet.
Right.
Out there being fast anyhow.
Yep.
So we don't talk. We don't raise our voices. We don't raise our voices about too much of anything. Politics, our children, welfare.
How much of that is a carryover from our, the treatment that we received and the protocol or policy that was in place when we were enslaved here?
All of it. All of it. Because you think back, what could you say when Master raped you?
This is a replica.
It doesn't matter that you had a baby look just like him.
Right.
Right.
Exactly.
What could you say?
Right.
You couldn't say
Your
anything.
husband's brown skin and you brown skin. Where does this little light skinned baby with blue eyes
Yeah, come from. So you couldn't say anything. And on top of that, the white women hated black women because the husband was raping them.
Yeah.
So they didn't want to expose the fact that
Right.
they had been raped because now the white woman was going to treat, or white woman was going to treat them worse.
Definitely.
Absolutely.
And on top of that, the father was going to end up putting the child on the auction block anyway.
Yeah.
Wow. Woo! Dr. Chappelle, this is a lot. This is a lot
That's
to
why
take
back in the
on.
day, the slavery woman could still breastfeed. The white woman, they just had a baby. You know, because it's just crazy.
But it's modern day slavery. It's modern day slavery. I gave you a book in your packet, and you can look in there. I just did 2 pages of an analysis, and it talks about the pariahs, pulling people down. That's how we do in a community. We don't push each other, we pull each other down. Why is it that we don't have enough black women who's talking about this issue? Courtney's house in D.C. is very, very strong. As a matter of fact, they taught me. I went to them and said, I want you to teach me. And so I took their courses. But we don't have that. We don't have the funding.
And where's Courtney House located?
On Levi Street, Northeast.
Okay.
We don't have funding. We don't have people who care. We don't have enough foster parents that make sure that these kids are safe. We need places that we can put these children. We need safe places for them to go. We don't have that. Courtney's house just opened up. I think she just opened up a safe house for these children. We don't have anywhere for them to go. And people want you to come out and talk, but they don't want to pay you. So we end up having to go out because it's so important to us free.
Wow.
But we can't keep doing that because I can't tell you the number of us who had to bankrupt because we pulled all this money out of our pockets
Right.
for this movement. Yes, for the movement. So what do we need? We need God first, Creator first. We need the Creator first. We need the perpetrators. We have to worry about them too. We have to send our blessings and prayer for them too because they're hurt. They've been victimized, and this is all they know.
Be predators.
So the question is how do we
Stop the cycle?
at least put it on hold for a minute so we can work with them?
And then not only what's going on here in the United States, but then you got them going off to other countries, and this becomes like a vacation. This is a good thing. Hey, the guys, we're going to go take our cigars, and we're going down to the Philippines.
We're going to the Brazil.
Going to Brazil, and we're going to party all week long, and you know what's going down. And, not only that, but now you're seeing, I think it was up in Massachusetts or somewhere, where two white guys had adopted 2 black children from somewhere, and they were sodomizing these children.
That happens all the time.
Wow.
All the time.
And that happens with these foster children here.
Yes.
I chose to do domestic work here because we are in such denial.
Wow.
And it's right here. I can look at somebody and know when they're being
They're
trafficked.
grooming them. It's like, not to say, not to say all 2 male couples that are doing that, but it happens.
It happens.
Now, what is happening, we can see what goes on in the music industry that supports the culture. Where's that culture being supported? Where is there like a web page? Is there a TV show? Is there something out there where subliminally or maybe not, this is being supported, and all of a sudden children are getting caught up in a cycle, or even adults, males, females, whatever, getting caught up in that, and it's almost encouraged or supported or not made to be so negative.
Well, you look at pornography, it's all over the place.
Oh yeah.
You look at pornography.
Child pornography.
Child pornography, you can go on Backpage.com and see it. Then when you go on Backpage.com, you have to search. It's not going to jump out at you because they know the authorities are watching them.
But don't you have to sign up?
Grindr. I heard about the website called Grindr or something like that. Where's their young children are lured into that also.
Okay, that's probably a piece of Backpage.com.
Oh, okay.
Too.
Okay.
Now, it's so I had to
So
take
wide
4 years
range.
off.
I can imagine.
It's stressful.
I'm trying to
I mean,
figure out how I'm
it's-
gonna make it through the rest of the day. Because I got 3 daughters,
Yeah, yeah.
and I got to call them up on the phone just to make sure, because it could happen any moment. You know, you see those
Where,
images of somebody
anytime, any
going
day.
down the grocery store aisle, and
Yes.
the child turns the corner before they get there, and that's the last time they see the
Yes.
child.
Yeah,
Yes.
my granddaughter is 11 years old, and she's been in workshops with me since I don't, I don't know when, because I want her to know.
Yeah. Oh,
And then after the workshop, I said, "Can you talk to me about what you learned?"
Yeah.
And I'm happy that she talked to me about it.
Right.
So we have to teach our
Making them
children.
aware. You gotta
Dr.
make them
Chappelle,
aware.
where do we go from here? What can we do? We've got a couple of minutes before we close out this segment of our show.
Just
What
go back
advice
to
would you
dance.
want to give to our audience?
I think for right now, the awareness. I think that's key. I think that people need to stop putting their heads in the sand and hear and listen. Open up your ears, open up your eyes, and see what's going on. I've talked today about the life of the children. So one of the ways that you can tell a child is when she's walking on stiletto heels and she's wobbling. She's not used to stiletto heels, and she's got these big fake lashes on. And usually they'll try to totally change the appearance. She's got a wig on. That might be a cause for concern. So if people will come more aware, and if people will contribute to organizations, black organizations, that's trying to help these children. Courtney's House is one. Mine is Spirit-Driven Women. If they could just help us to help these children, because I can tell you, I don't go after grant money. I don't go after government money.
Now, is there a number that they can call you? You said spirit-driven.
Spirit-Driven Women. I don't go after government money.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I don't, for reasons I don't need to go into here. I don't
Right.
go after government
Right.
money.
I mean,
And so if that could happen, where we could write more, publish more, like I've done, write more, publish more, speak more, travel more. You know, we're asked to come all the time, but then they want you to pay for everything. We don't have it.
what about the medium, the television and the internet medium, for bringing this to the attention of the public? You know, other than, you know, a show like this, are you getting the airtime on any of the major networks?
Of course not. Of course not.
Well, that means we just have to do more. We have to figure out, and then we got to we have to be creative, and we have to bring somebody in here who has had that experience and conceal their identity and talk about what their experiences are and make this a public thing, you know, so that more people are aware of it, and then share it out on the internet and make sure that thousands and thousands of people are getting an opportunity to learn what this is, what it looks like, how it happens. You know, and then the big deal is, you know, when you see somebody in that situation, how you can help them. Because I think that's really
Well, I have
important.
a Facebook page, and there's a lot of information on that Facebook page.
Okay, well, that's what we want to do now. Tell us the contact information, how somebody out there in the listening and viewing audience might get in contact with you.
You can telephone me, Dr. Nesa Chappelle, at 240-691-3313. For any questions, you can email me at Chappelle, CHAPPELLE chap at verizon.net. My Facebook is Facebook/Nesa, Nesa Chappelle, CHAPPELLE.
Okay, give us that phone number a couple more times.
The number is 240-691-3313.
Okay, great. Well, we want to thank you for coming on today. This, again, is an eye-opener, not one that I can say I was looking forward to get, but I'm glad I got it. It's kind of like the day that I decided I was going to get into the natural food business. You know, you never know how that conversation is going to move you. And, of course, now I'm being open to this whole industry, and the people that I'm going to connect you up with, I think are good connects for you. So I want to make sure that we make that happen. Maybe we can bring all of us on board, and we can create a think tank, and we can start creating a safe place for people to, you know, have this conversation. And, you know, it's something that has to be done. So I'm thankful, Dr. Nesa Chappelle, for being able to come on today and share with us that which you're obviously very passionate about. And I thank you, Romalda, for coming in and sharing with us as well and being a part of the conversation. This has been the Not On My Watch show, and we're going to be back with more great programming. You all stay tuned. But until then, get in contact with Dr. Chappelle. Get in contact with us. You know how to find us. If you don't, you can get me at 330 Baruch 1. That's